Coming up in today's episode.
There are more people or more children in slavery today than at any time in history.
What parent could say no to taking a loan, no matter what the consequence is, if they can't feed their child tomorrow?
And we think about it maybe as the past and archaic, but as you're explaining, this is, and I'm familiar with this is going on every day.
There's an entire industry where, people who are extremely wealthy who need an organ transplant can pay sums of money to basically have an organ harvested from someone who's in slavery.
Welcome to the iBIBLE Podcast with Steve Cleary, brought to you by RevelationMedia.
Hi, I'm Steve Cleary. Welcome to another episode of the iBIBLE Podcast. Today, I'm with Andrew from Set Free Alliance. Got an amazing update for you and testimony of what's going on with our partnership with Set Free Alliance. And I know you're going to be greatly impacted when you hear about the kids that are being helped. And maybe it's a little difficult to talk about, you'd be sad as well because of what these children are going through. But I think it's important to talk about. I think it's important to talk about how to help these kids. And the best way we know how to do that is through partnerships. So welcome, Andrew. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Steve. Super excited to be here with you today.
Now, where are you calling in from? Where is Set Free Alliance?
I am in Greenville, South Carolina. So that's home for me, and that's where we're Set Free is based.
Okay, now I have to ask this. So I was going to try to guess. Your accent, it's not is it a South Carolina accent?
It is.
Born and raised?
I'm from here, born and raised in South Carolina.
Nice. So let's back up a little bit. We'll give a short history lesson. We were at Southern Baptist Convention, which was June 2024, which from today is just like 7 months ago. And actually, I think my wife was the first one to visit your booth. You guys had a booth that was kind of kitty corner to ours. We couldn't see you because we were in the front of our bus and you guys were towards the back. But my wife had gone over and you guys were passing out, I think, little beanie animals, right? What was it? Remind me.
They're elephants that we can talk about it more, but they're made by girls who've been rescued out of slavery. So they're just little stuffed elephants, and we kind of use those to share their story, so that we were passing those out at the Southern Baptist Convention.
So my wife goes and visits your booth. She comes back and she's got this elephant, and she told me exactly what you just said. She told me this was made by children that have been rescued, from the slave trade. And I'm like, you're kidding. I'm like, where did you get it? Who did you talk to? And I'm getting all excited about this. So I had a chance to come over to the booth and talk to you guys, and just really loved what you're doing. And I want to paint a picture. When you're at a convention, there are hundreds of booths. There are hundreds of ministries. There are hundreds of opportunities. And my experience is, and I've had a lot of experiences this, I've been to, I don't know if I've been to 100 type conventions or exhibits or something, maybe 100. Everybody's always very eager to partner. Everyone's always very eager to help. I mean, why wouldn't they be? You talk to people and you say, what can I do? What can I, how can we work together? And my experience is almost none of those partnerships ever actually happen. I'm not going to say there's any bad intention, because I think it's all wonderful intention, but we go home and we're busy. We go home and we've collected, 26 books and gifts and contacts and business cards. I can tell you most of those packs that I've brought home, I've never even looked at a second time. You just can't. You're busy. So I'm as guilty. If you're watching, I'm raising my hand right now. I'm as guilty as the next guy of saying, hey, how can we work together? And then nothing ever happens. And that is just call it cynical. I don't know. That's just my experience in all of these events that I've been doing for 35 years during my life. But Set Free Alliance was different. I mean, I could tell from when we met with you guys and we said, we want to talk about how we can work together. And at that time, we had an elephant. We knew you guys were helping with children rescued from the slave trade. We didn't know how you were doing it. We learned you were doing water wells. And you guys came over, and the CEO came over and talked to us. And give us the elevator pitch. What is Set Free Alliance? What do you do exactly?
Yeah, and just to kind of just piggyback off what you said, it's funny because when we were setting our booth up at the Southern Baptist Convention, the bus, the iBible bus was there, and we said, "Oh man, we're behind this bus. No one's going to see our booth." And it's funny how the Lord works sometimes, because obviously that wasn't the case. We had tons of traffic at our booth, but also we were able to talk to you guys and partner, which we're going to talk about, I'm sure, and it's been awesome. But yeah, Set Free, just kind of the quick elevator pitch is we started as a water ministry. We started as a ministry where we were going to places that didn't have access to clean water and didn't have access to the gospel. And we were using clean water as a way to share the living water with people, the way to introduce people to Jesus Christ. By meeting a very basic humanitarian need, we were able to gain access to share the gospel. And so that's how we started. And we were working in South Asia, drilling water wells, and we became aware of the fact that there are still people today in 2025, right now, that are living in slavery. And so we just couldn't turn a blind eye to it. And so obviously with the guidance of the Holy Spirit and just some crazy things that happened, we were able to start, in addition to drilling water wells, and we continue to do that today, to rescue kids out of slavery situations in South Asia and to be able to care for them, introduce them to Jesus, reunite them with their families at times. But it's been really awesome to see how God has taken us from a water ministry to rescuing kids out of slavery and how all those things connect. So that's the very short elevator version of who we are.
And I mean, I've read some of your reports. You guys have helped a lot of children. How many are you up to?
So we have rescued over 80,000 kids to date from slavery. Right now, today, we're caring for close to 10,000 kids holistically. We've got a large campus. We've also got kids who are living in what we call church homes, where we have these pastors in these villages and their wives who are taking kids in and caring for them under our network. So it's been awesome. The numbers sound crazy. It almost seems like it can't be true, but it's just all miracles that God has allowed us to be part of and has used us to be able to do his work. So,
and give me a time frame. What year would you have rescued your first child?
The first child was rescued in 2006. And 2008 is when it was. And it's kind of a crazy story. Our team was in India drilling water wells, and we were told about child slavery, and we were taken to a mine where granite and slate was being mined out of the ground, and it was children. I mean, kids as young as 8 years old, some even 6 to 8, working in these mines and providing the labor. And it's very tough work. I mean, these kids are down in a big hole in the ground that's 100 plus degrees outside. There's no shade. They're literally chiseling rocks off of the side of these huge walls, and they're passing them, they're human conveyor belts passing them down. Super tough work. And so we were standing there, our team was standing there, and the question came, what do we do? How, God, you've shown us this. Like, how can we rescue kids out of this? How can we be a part of this? We can't turn a blind eye to this horror. And we were talking to our team in India, and the first response was, well, we could buy kids out of slavery. We could literally basically pay a price and purchase the child and care for them, reunite them with their family. So that was what we first did. It was in 2008. We rescued our first child from slavery. We literally asked the dollar amount. We posted it on Facebook, and we raised the money to rescue the first girl out of slavery, which was awesome. But we soon realized that this wasn't a sustainable way to rescue people out of slavery. We were really just generating demand. If these people knew they could get large sums of money from America or some other country by enslaving children, that's just generating more fuel, more demand for slavery. So that was the first child we rescued. Obviously, we've changed our tactics, and how we rescue kids is very different now, but that's how it all got started.
Now, I got all these things flowing through my mind, and so I want to make sure I try to get to most of them and talk more about this. But I have read a quote from you guys that there are more people or more children in slavery today than at any time in history. Is that a true comment as far as you know?
It is. Yeah. Modern day slavery, the statistic is that there are more people in slavery today than in any point in human history.
More people, more children, or both?
More people in general, but a lot of those people being children. I don't know if, the statistic is more children, but it's just more people overall. But over half of those individuals are children for sure.
So now we're going to talk about how they end up in slavery. And I know we've talked about this. You shared it with me, and we've actually studied some with other that's happened throughout history. And it can start with a need, and it involves an agent. Walk our listeners, or if you're watching, walk us through how a child, and these are very poor children, how a child ends up in slavery.
Yeah, it's really sad. And, this can vary in different parts of the world. But in India, specifically where we're working, the caste system is very alive and well. If you're familiar with the caste system, it's an ancient system, a class system in India. It's based on Hinduism. And, you'll hear that the caste system is dead.
Well, it's technically illegal, right? I mean,
correct.
Officially, the caste system is legal. But I mean, I've been in India. Yeah, it's just crazy to think it's illegal.
Yeah, I think the laws, that used to actually govern the caste system are not on the books anymore, but the way that culture operates, it's very much alive and well. And anyone who goes to India, just a casual observer, you'll see it. It's the way that, an American goes to India and they're treated like royalty because it's just ingrained that, because they're from America, they're a higher caste, which, we know that we're all created in God's image and we're all equal in that sense.
Right.
But yeah, so these children are from the lowest caste, often called the untouchables in India. They are very poor. They are oppressed. The culture oppresses them. The whole karma concept that they deserve this life. They deserve to be poor. They deserve to live in poverty because of something that they did in their previous life.
This all Hindu traditions and teachings.
Correct. Exactly. It's ingrained in the culture. It's deeply ingrained in the culture and everything. And so what ends up happening is obviously these families are in very, extreme poverty. And a lot of times what happens is someone in the family gets sick. And this is where the water part ties into it. And this is kind of how water and rescuing kids from slavery really go hand in hand, because think about people who don't have access to clean water. They're drinking water from a pond or a creek where sewage and animals use the restroom. As you can imagine, people are getting sick. And so a lot of times what happens is someone in the family gets really sick, and because they're in such poverty, they have no way to be treated. They can't go and get medical care. They have no money. So this is where the agents come in. These agents, they are human traffickers, essentially, come into these very poor villages and they offer loans to these families. And a lot of times the loans can be as small as like $50 or $60, which would be enough to feed a family of 4 to 5 for a month. And, if you think about it, it's what parent could say no to taking a loan, no matter what the consequence is, if they can't feed their child tomorrow,
Or medicine, right? Life-saving, it could be life-saving medicine.
Yeah, exactly. If one of the members of the family is very sick, or if they can't feed their family, they have no choice but to accept these loans. And so being from a lower caste, these people are often uneducated, they're often illiterate, so they're not able to even read the terms of the loan that they're agreeing to. They're signing papers a lot of times even with their thumbprint because they can't write their name. But actually, a lot of times in this paperwork, it's actually custody papers for their children. So the loan agent will say, "What's the name of everyone in your family?" And the mom or dad will give the names of the kids. And the loan agent will literally form up paperwork that oftentimes is a legal document which signs custody of the child over. So then what will happen is, the money will be handed over to the family, and a month later, the loan agent comes knocking on the door. Where's your payment? These are very high interest loans. These families, most of the time, can't pay it back. And so this is when a lie is told, which is, okay, well, you signed custody of your child over to us, but what we're going to do is we're going to take them to the city, or we'll take them to Delhi, or we'll take them to Hyderabad, or a large city, and we're going to give them a great job. We're going to take care of them. And then as soon as they pay your debt off, we'll return them. We'll reunite them with you. But in actuality, these people are human traffickers. They have no interest in the well-being of the child. They have no interest in reuniting the child with their family. What they do is then sell the child. Some children are sold into quarries, just like the story I shared, rock quarries. Some are sold to brick factories, some are sold to brothels, and then the agent's done. They got their money, and the record of the child is lost. So, it's really a horrible cycle that really all stems from the caste system and from just the fact that these people are so desperate. There's no education. There's all these medical problems, and so it's really there's so many aspects to it. But that is in India specifically. That's a typical way that a child will be taken into slavery.
It's just so hard to imagine. I mean, this actually gone on throughout history. There's actually a scripture in the Bible where this happens. So we have we have a servant who owes more money than he can ever pay, and the king, he can't pay. So the king says, sell his wife and children, so at least some debt can be paid. And of course, the parable continues, and the servant pleads for mercy, and the king forgives him all his debt. And then the parable goes on that he doesn't forgive the next person. Also, in studying the life of Saint Nicholas, I mean, his children were going to be sold. And when we looked at what is the story behind that and tried to do some research, we concluded more than likely he had a debt he couldn't pay. And so there's always been this thread of culture that you can't pay a debt. We don't realize that in America unless we're thinking of you borrow money from organized crime family, they break your thumbs, right? Or worse, they beat you up and it's high interest, they don't pay it. So there's always been this thread of debtors. And I think probably everyone's heard of debtor's prison. You have to go to prison until you pay your debt or your family can be sold. And we think about it maybe as the past and archaic, but as you're explaining, and I'm familiar with this is going on every day in India, and a family may only owe $20, $30, $40, $50, $60. Of course, the interest is doubling the money. And so the agent takes a child and probably gets, a couple $100 to sell that child.
Yeah, and it all depends on the child, and what their perceived capabilities are, as to how much they can be sold for. And, really, at the end of the day, too, what we found is these agents, it actually becomes where selling the child is even more profitable than the debt being repaid. And so that's the goal. I mean,
they go into it with this in mind. Yeah, they don't want the money, right? I mean, they would make money, but they don't want the money. They want the child.
Exactly.
So they know that from day one. Thank you for sharing that. That's an interesting point to this is the motive from day one. And no one's getting in trouble, right? I mean, the government's not coming in and throwing agents in prison.
Correct. Yeah, slavery is illegal in India specifically, but India is home to more slaves than any other country in the world. And so, as is the case in a lot of places, there is corruption, and a blind eye is they're turning a blind eye to what's actually happening, and they're also denying it. A big thing is the reputation of the country on the world stage, and if India is taking action against child slavery, then it becomes
known
worldwide news.
Yeah,
it becomes known.
So they can't acknowledge it, so they ignore it. And I'm going to go out and say, I know that you talk about them working in granite and different mines. These products are also coming to the U.S.
Correct.
I mean, we can't be fooled, right? I mean, it's not like the tag says made with child labor, but India is a huge exporter of products around the world, including the U.S. These products are not, the sex trade may be active. Probably even the sex trade is active from foreigners coming into India. And so they are serving a global economy that we're a part of. And we're not reporting on it either outside of you guys and other ministries like you. How many children do you think are enslaved in India? I mean, I know it's probably a number you can't even imagine, but do you have a guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the statistics that we've seen are saying like 18 million. It's really hard to put a number on it just because so much of it happens underground, and it's hard to actually really know. I mean, our teams on the ground are saying the numbers are actually much higher than that.
Really?
These are just statistics that we're hearing, but yeah, it's hard to put a thumb on it and to know how many people actually are, and it's covered up in so many ways too. I mean, it's unbelievable. And one other thing too is this is actually really horrible, and it's hard to talk about. But one of the things that our teams have been telling us about that's happening is organ harvesting as well. There's an entire industry where, people who are extremely wealthy who need an organ transplant can pay sums of money to basically have an organ harvested from someone who's in slavery. And it's a very profitable business as well. So it's hard to think. I mean, that's demonic and it's evil. And it's, one of the most difficult and horrible things you could ever imagine. But it's the reality of what's happening.
Well, it's hard to imagine. And then it's hard to imagine. I guess I don't know, maybe it's impossible for me to imagine at the scale it's actually happening. Because you think, you can talk about different illegal activities and maybe they're, like you said, underground, but this is pretty commonplace in India. I know I've talked about it before. Some of these kids end up in trade. Most of them end up in labor, but some of them end up in the trade. I mean, there is no escape. It's not like they're going to run away. They have no place to go. And you even face, when you rescue these children, you face situations where you cannot return them to their families, right? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, our goal is always to reunite with the kids with their families, because as we all know, the best place for a child is with their family for the most part. And, we desire that for the kids. But a lot of times, and we found that more times than not, these families are not purposely selling their children into slavery. They're deceived, they're uneducated, they're tricked, they want their child back. But sadly, we have found examples of a mom or dad who has sold their child into slavery on purpose, knowingly, or it's abusive or unsafe home. And so in those situations, we're not going to reunite the child because it's not safe for the child to be reunited. So, but in every instance, when we do reunite the child, part of the way we operate is a big part of what we do. And really the driving goal of everything we're doing is to plant churches and to make Christ known. And these villages we're drilling water wells, we're, reuniting kids from slavery with their families. We are working to prevent children from going into slavery by educating the families of what these loan agents are doing. And also we have a microfinance program where we're going and we're finding out which families have taken these loans out and they're still owing these loans, and we will pay the loan off for the family, who can then pay us back, with no interest on on their own terms, right, with no consequence. But part of what we're doing is we're actively working in these villages, and we have pastors in these villages, and we have our teams in these villages. And so we are doing as much due diligence as possible before we reunite a child, just to make sure it's a safe place for that child to be. And if it's not a safe place, or if the child says, no, I absolutely do not want to go back, then that's where we're caring for the children long term.
And how many of these children do you currently have in your care?
So we have just right around 10,000 kids in our care right now. We have a main campus where we have 1,200 kids. And then we have what we call church homes, where we have kids, usually on average 10 kids, living in a church building, being cared for by the pastor and the pastor's wife. And we're providing all the medical supplies, the food, the educational materials, so that pastor doesn't have that financial burden. But our goal is we would love to build more campuses. We are at capacity, our one campus. Part of the challenge is that, similar to the US, like if you had a foster child in Texas, you can't move to Arizona. You have to stay in Texas, right? Because that's where you're fostering the child. That's where the child's from. We file all the paperwork in India to take legal custody of these children.
Oh, wow.
And so we have to keep them in the state that they're from. So obviously our campus is only in one central, location. So a lot of the kids can't stay on that campus because they're from a different state within India. And so in that instance, we are going and having them in these church homes.
I didn't realize 10,000 under your care. I knew you had a center with 1,200, which of course we partnered on. And we'll talk more about that. Josh is going to pull up. We're going to show 3 testimonies. And I don't know, Andrew, do we have to block any of these faces on these 3 testimonies?
Yeah, there's going to be one face and one name that we will block out.
Okay.
So, but it shouldn't interrupt the video too much.
So for those watching or listening, these are 3 actual testimonies that were shared with us for the next couple of minutes. Let's listen to these.
We used to live happily with 2 kids. I used to go and earn a living and feed my kids regularly. One day I was sick and my wife had taken out a loan from an agent. I was unable to pay the agent in time and interest was doubled. and they made me work in this place. I was not allowed to go home to see my kids, and they used to only give me a glass of water and 2 loaves of bread. They charged for that too, and added my debt every day.
My mother bought credit when my father was not feeling well due to no work. She was unable to clear it, so the agents had taken me and my brother by saying they needed us for work, and they sold us to mine owners, where the supervisor used to harm us in many ways. We had been informed that if we ran away from the mines, we would be killed. Some kids tried and they were killed in front of us. The girls were being used by supervisors and others. We all used to get afraid and never expected we were going to get out.
No one used to come here and talk to us because we were from a lower caste. People never allowed us to walk in other parts of the village. We had to go at night to get water. Sometimes people would catch us and beat us for using their well. Many women have lost pregnancies from drinking harmful water. And some children have also died due to the contaminated water.
Then a pastor came and informed Pastor, who immediately cleared my debt. Now I'm free from debt. I go to work, cut wood, and sell it, so I can repay the loan given to me by the pastor's team. I was so happy and thankful to the team who helped me stay with my family, and for saving my kids from being taken by the agent.
Now I've been saved, and I'm living happily with good food and accommodation. I love playing with the other kids here. Our only work is to study well. I'm looking for my parents so I can be with them, and I also want to find my brother, wherever he is. I want to go to the other mines to find my brother. I want to study hard, get a job, and help, so we can bring many more kids like us out of the mines.
Many people, including pastors and NGOs, came here. They just took pictures, made fake promises, and never returned or helped us. But the pastors kept their word. And within 1 week, we got the well. They said, "It is not I, but Him who sent me." We know that Jesus has sent them to help us. Everyone is healthy and fine, and we are so blessed to have this well, which we call a gift from Jesus.
That's it's kind of emotional to watch that. This is my second time, Andrew, watching it, and I picked up on new things they said. Many NGOs, took pictures but never helped. But the people actually getting the help, and then seeing a well, and I didn't notice the sign the first time. She says, a gift from Jesus. They literally did a plaque called the gift from Jesus. So I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional just from watching that, but you guys are doing such an amazing work, and we can see if you provide clean water, if you provide medical care, if you provide education, the most important thing you can do is prevent. So you guys talk about rescuing 80,000 children. I can't imagine how many you prevented from being sold into slavery through your ministry.
Yeah, it's hard to know just from an education standpoint, when we're talking to these families, the true number. But that's our goal. We feel like it's, we need to stop the faucet. It's like we're trying to we're rescuing these kids, but they're just continuing to pour in. So we're really trying to focus as much as possible on education, prevention with our microfinance program, where it's fully funding in the first district. It was an idea that came out of COVID, where we were really praying about how do we prevent this from happening? Because if we can't figure out a solution to prevention, then we're always going to have this problem, and we're always going to be rescuing. And so our hope and our goal is that we can continue our prevention program into more districts, because we actually have seen in the first district where we started this program, the loan agents completely disappeared.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they just stopped even trying, because like we said, the goal, they were getting repaid, but they wanted the kids. That was more profitable for
Than
them.
the money.
So they went to a different place. And so, that's a sign of success, but we know that they're just in a different area now, targeting a different group of people. So we really want to continue to grow that so that we can really and truly make a dent on the number of kids who are being taken into slavery.
The iBible Podcast with Steve Cleary, brought to you by RevelationMedia. This episode was produced by Joshua Burton and Aaliyah Gonzalez, with original theme music by Xperia. Subscribe to stay up to date on new episodes and iBible content, and visit the show notes for more information and resources from today's show.